Okay, I will start this Christian lecture. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. I hope all participants in this Zoom meeting are healthy and we can join until the end of the event. And we have a speaker today, that's Professor Divya CD. With today's topics is biometrics. And today I will be moderator of this event. So for Professor Divya, you can start your presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Shall I start? And one of you kindly acknowledge, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Thank you, sir. Shall I proceed? Shall I share the presentation?
Yes, you can share the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Is my presentation visible? One of you kindly let me know.
No, it's I can see your PPT.
Yes. You can see the PPT, sir?
No, I can see. I can see the PPT now.
You're able to see?
Not yet. I can see your PPTs now.
Not yet, sir. 1 minute.
Yes, okay, no problem. Okay, I can see your PPT now.
Yes. My voice is audible, right? You're able to see the PPT, sir?
Yes, it's clear. It's clear now.
Thank you, sir. Fine. Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm just going to give a lecture on the topic biometrics. So I'm Divya Siri, working as assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Vidyavardhaka College of Engineering, Mysore. So today I'll just be talking about the concept of biometrics. So we'll just proceed with our topic. So the contents that I'm just going to cover in my lecture is, one is the introduction, that is we are just going to learn about the introduction, that is what exactly is the biometrics, why it is useful. And then we are just going through traditional versus biometric security, that is in security terms, how the traditional methods vary from the biometric security. And the next one is we are just going to study regarding the biometric systems and the companies that are involved in manufacturing of these biometric devices. And then there are plenty of the biometric traits. So out of those, which were the major, or which are the 3 major traits of biometrics? So those things we are just have a glimpse of it. And then we go ahead with the application of biometrics and then the future of biometrics. So we'll proceed with our talk now. So first, we'll just go ahead with the biometrics overview. What exactly is the biometrics all about? So all of you nowadays, you have seen biometrics in almost all the areas. Why exactly it came into existence, what exactly is the biometrics and why it is useful, and all these things we are just going to refer it. An overview says that biometrics is very important nowadays because you are just verifying yourself, not on the basis of some passwords that you remember in your mind, or not on the basis of some codes. So for identification purpose, you have to be present here. The particular person has to be present here, which provides more security when compared to your passwords or codes or some other things. So that is where the biometrics comes into picture. So what exactly is biometrics and where we got this word from? What is the meaning of this particular word? So we'll just go ahead looking at this. So what is biometrics? So the name itself is indicating that biometrics is nothing but the science of measuring some physiological or the anatomical characteristics of individuals. What does that mean? That is, you will measure based upon the physiological or the physical characteristics of a person. So you have to be present as a person for this. Bio itself indicates that we will be measuring some physical characteristics. So bio means, as we all know, it is nothing but physical or anatomical. Metric means it's a measurement. So based upon the person as it is, we are just considering it as biometrics. We are measuring the physical or anatomical characteristic of a person for our security purpose. So that is where we will just come across this particular topic called as biometrics. What exactly it performs? It performs the automatic identification of a person. What do you mean by automatic identification of a person? Based upon the physiological characteristics that we have, it might be the iris, or it might be the face, or it might be the fingerprint, or it might be the DNA, or it might be some behavioral biometrics like gait, or the handwriting, or the voice recognition, anything. So there comes the measurement or the automatic identification of a person. Here we are not identifying the person based upon his signature or something like that. We are just identifying the person based upon his or her physiological characteristic itself. So that is what we just call it as a biometrics. It is automatic identification of a person based upon the characteristics or based upon the physical characteristics or physiological characteristics of a person. So what exactly, where it is used and where we will just apply this biometrics? So nowadays it is everywhere, because the security is the main concern, as we all know now. Since the security is the main concern, we are just going ahead with the biometrics. And nowadays, due to pandemic situation also, we don't want to touch the pen where the other person has used that particular pen or something like that to put the signature and all these things. So without coming in contact with anyone, if a person wants to identify himself, then he can go ahead with biometrics where he has to just give his face. He can just give his face so he gets recognized properly. So due to this pandemic, obviously the biometrics is also increasing. The particular market for the biometric products is also increasing a lot because there's no in contact, that is contactless. So there is nothing called as you have to come in contact with the other person, or we have to come in contact with some pens and all to put the signatures and all. There is no need for that. This is where our biometrics comes into picture. And it is becoming more common in corporate public security systems everywhere. So nowadays it is very common in almost all the areas wherever the security comes into the picture. And it is nowadays used in schools, offices, and where not. Everywhere the biometric verification and biometric authentication is present in the present scenario. So this is where we just do the authentication or a biometric verification. This is where it's becoming more popular. And there are many companies nowadays which deals with actual biometrics. So which are all the companies that are involved as CMI Tech, Iris ID, Idemia, Crossmatch, all these things, all these companies are working on this particular biometrics aspect. It is not that only these companies, there are many such companies which are involved in this biometrics. What exactly these companies does? They actually provide the particular products. You might have seen many of the products where your face will be captured in airport or security systems or in office or in schools and somewhere else for attendance and all those things. So where exactly they'll capture your picture. So for capturing the picture, these companies will develop their own product. How the products will differ, how actually the products will differ is based upon the time or based upon the particular way of things for face biometrics or fingerprint biometrics, and how fast the product is analyzing the face or fingerprint biometrics, and how accuracy the product is giving based upon this. So based on this, the companies have evolved, and there are many such companies that are dealing with the biometrics nowadays. So this is the quite little bit introduction of biometrics. What exactly is a biometrics? So now we got to know biometrics is nothing but we are just measuring the characteristics of a person. So this is nothing but the automatic identification of a person by our software development kits or the software that actually identifies the person based upon the person's template that is being present in the database. How actually this identification performed? We'll just go ahead with that. Fine. So based upon this introduction about the biometrics, we are just moving on to the history of biometrics. What exactly was the history of biometrics? When actually the people came to know that they have to go ahead with this term called as biometrics, when actually the people came to know that they have to be involved in this particular measurement, is that this biometrics term, as I told, is derived from the Greek words bio and metrics, which means bio means, as we all know, it is nothing but the life, and metrics means it is the measurement. So this is where the term actually existed. And it was in the 14th century where the identification of the fingerprint came into picture. So previously they had some identification of the fingerprints. So when they just started with the biometrics, it was not completely the face that they were actually matching. They actually came up with something called as a fingerprint. Then they came to realize that, okay, fine, the fingerprints are actually not matching with the individual fingerprints are unique. That is, one fingerprint is not matching with the other person's fingerprint. So we can just consider this fingerprint itself as a unique identity for a person. So this is where they just evolved with something called as the human being himself is having something to be recognized uniquely. So for beginning purpose, they just dealt with the fingerprints first. So where they identified that the fingerprints were unique among two individuals. So there they started identifying the persons on the basis of their particular fingerprint itself. So it actually came into existence in 14th century when they just worked on the particular fingerprints, or the practice of identifying the persons based upon the fingerprints. There was something like softwares and all where actually automatically identification was done. People were used to identify based upon the fingerprints. They used to put their fingerprint on the sand and all those things, and they used to put the fingerprint on the paper, and then they used to verify. They put some color on the particular fingers, and then they used to print on it, and then they used to recognize that there are some ridges, there are some bifurcations, there are some patterns in the finger that actually existed, which helped us to identify the human beings as unique. So that is where this particular measurement came into picture. So then after that, in 1686, an anatomy professor like Marcello Malficchi, actually in the University of Bologna, what he just noticed was there were fingerprint ridges, spirals, loops. All the different patterns were there in the fingers, which actually enabled or which actually made the particular process of identification of a person easier. It is not only by seeing at the fingers or the shape of the fingers. They used to recognize that the particular finger is unique. What they did was they just analyzed the finger based upon the fingerprint. If we just normally, if we see this is my finger, and if I normally see the finger, I will not get to know what exactly it is, or I'll not to get to know that is based upon the shape or height or width of the finger. I'll be able to manage, or I'll be able to recognize a person, or I'll be able to make a person as unique only based upon the width or only based upon the height. No, not like that. What he analyzed was in the fingerprint itself. When he just asked a person to put his fingerprint on the paper, then he realized that the fingerprint had some patterns which were unique. Then they began to identify the patterns. Then they began to give some name to the patterns. So then they began to identify that particular fingerprint as it contains the ridges, the spirals, the loops, and all these things were contained in the fingerprint. Then they began this particular identification that we can work on it to identify the individual based upon this also. So this was a brief history of the biometrics, where they actually came up with this particular aspect based upon the fingerprint. So what was the timeline when we just got through this particular biometrics? This is the timeline, and I have not added complete thing on yearly basis or something. So which were the major steps that were carried out during this time frame? Only those steps are being involved, or those steps are being identified here. So what are all the major steps that were actually being involved? As in 1858, the first systematic capture of hand images for identification purpose was recorded. So when I just told that fingerprint, when they just got to know that the fingerprint itself contains or only one finger contains so much of ridges, so much of patterns, then they came up with a question where the question was like, if only one finger contained so much of spirals, so much of ridges, so much of loops, whirls, and all those things, why not the complete hand here contained all the things there? So then what they did was, why can't we go ahead with the hand geometry? That is, the complete hand may contain many of the spirals, ridges, whirls. So when compared with only one fingerprint, if we just scan the complete hand, we'll be getting more data, or we'll be able to identify a person with more accuracy. So that is where they thought, when they identified the fingerprints as unique, then they just went ahead with the hand biometrics, where they just thought of scanning the complete hand. So when they scanned the complete hand, it became a hand geometry, where they used to get different patterns in the hand to identify it in a better way. So actually, it's the purpose that was being recorded. And then in 1883, Twain writes about fingerprints in Life on Mississippi, where he just wrote regarding the fingerprints, how actually it was unique and what was the purpose of identification of someone using the fingerprint. And in the olden days, we might have seen, when the people were not so educated, they don't know how to put the signature on the sheets. They don't know, they were not so much educated to put the signature, they were not studied something. Then they used to get their fingerprints. So then they got to know that this fingerprint has something which can be uniquely identified. So this is not, or this was not there in 1880s or something. In 1650, 1640 itself, they had something called as putting a fingerprint or on the paper and all those things, but they were not able to recognize the patterns and something like that. Later on, when they just go ahead with these books and all, then they came to realize that these fingerprints came to be unique. And then they just went on realizing, or then they just started their work on the complete hand, the complete fingers, and all these stuff. So in 1936, so when they just went with the fingerprint, then they just started analyzing, then they just started thinking that when we are able to identify a person based upon his fingerprint, why not the other traits of biometrics? Can we identify a person based upon his facial features as well? Does one person face is similar to the other person face in all the aspects? Though with our normal eyes, we may imagine that the twins are similar. So we may have a question that yes, each human being or each individual is different, but how about the twins? They look similar to each other. So then how we will be able to identify the twins in that case? Their face will be similar. How it is possible to identify? Then they just went through the fingerprints again of the both the twins. So then they just realized that, okay, fine, something is different there. And then they realized, is there any other biometric trait? Is there any other biometric trait that they can be involved with? So then they just came up with this called as iris pattern in the eyes, which actually was completely different among the two individuals. And it is not unique among the twins also. One in several to several million cases may be by chance, may be same, but not. So they just recognized that among all the things, when they just went ahead with the fingerprints, when they just went ahead with the face, when they just went ahead with the iris, they just recognized that there's a pattern in the eyes, there's a pattern in the iris, which actually is completely unique between the twins also. So that is what they just came up with, the concept of iris pattern inside the eyes. So they come up with this iris pattern for identification. They proposed it. It was not actually implemented. They just proposed it. Why can't we go ahead with this? So in 1960s, actually, they just came up with the, when they just dealt with the fingerprint, when they just dealt with the iris patterns and all those things. In 1960s, they just came up with complete face recognition. So what they thought was, see, for the fingerprint and all, we must ask a person whether he is able to give his fingerprint to us. So in olden days and all, it was very difficult for us to actually convince the person to give his fingerprint or to identify the person. So that was a scenario. When that was a scenario, they just thought that how can we identify a person if the person is not willing to give his fingerprint? At least will we be able to identify the person through his face or through his facial features at least? Then they just came up with, why can't we go ahead with the facial features? I think we can just have a study on the facial features as well, so that if it is unique among both the individuals, then we can just go ahead. So when we just look the face of a particular person, what exactly it indicates is that we will be able to identify this person is not similar to that person. We are the person a name there. Fine. So we are just giving the person a name there. And then we are able to identify that particular person. This is not that particular person. This is a person by name A. This is a person by name B. This is a person by name C. How we are able to identify that particular person? Through the help of our eyes. We are able to identify that particular person. He is called by this name or she is called by this name, because they both look unique. If all the individuals were of same, then we were not able to identify who exactly he is. How it is possible? Then they thought, like, if our eyes is able to recognize one individual as A and the other individual as B, suppose, why can't we automate it? How exactly our eyes is able to recognize the person based upon the facial features, right? He may look like this, the other person may look in a similar, not in a similar way. Fine. So in that case, we just had a question to ourselves, like, if our eyes is able to recognize such things, why can't we automate it? So there is something which uniquely identifies that particular person. That information we are sending it to the brain, where we just store something. So why can't we have a system where something is identified and we are automating based upon the features? Why can't my system identify the features in the same way as my eyes does? So this is where our face recognition existed, and it was semi-automated. Complete automatically it was not done, semi-automated. Some of the features we used to enter, this might be the thing, that might be the thing. And based upon that, they just started working on it. Okay, this individual, they just started with the color. Okay, fine, his color is like this, her color is like this. And then they started with, he is having some marks on the face. This person is not having some marks on the face. So my eyes is able to actually discriminate, or my eyes is able to actually distinguish in between these two people based upon this particular scenario. Then they just came up with a semi-automatic. That is, they just gave the system some of the inputs and they just ask the system whether it's correct or not. Suppose if I just give you two photographs of a person, of an individual, then if I ask whether these two persons are similar to each other, absolutely you will say no, they are not similar to each other. Then I'll ask a question why they are not similar to each other. So then you might have an answer to that particular question as, okay, this person faces something different and that person faces something different. How you got to know that they are different? Because it might be the shape of the face, it might be the color, or it might be the actual positioning of the eyes, nose, where the face looked dissimilar to each other. They had eyes, they had nose, they had the mouth, everything. But the facial characteristics actually were different when compared. So that is what they just started feeding to the system to analyze that two persons or two individuals are not the same. So then in 1985, they just came up with iris. They just went through the face, then they just realized that. And when they just went through the face, they were able to identify that two persons were not the same. Two persons were not similar. But when they just came up with the problem, see, when we just work on research or when we work on certain topics, we'll just be coming up with many of the questions for that matter. So when they just came up with their own question of identification of the twins, there came a problem because two twins looked absolutely similar to each other. And there were no actual elements that were there to distinguish among the twins. So then that was a problem there. that existed, and that came up with a new research on iris. So then they just went on to other biometric trait called as iris inside the eyes, where they just found that this iris is having some patterns, some features, which are not the same among the individuals. So that is where in 1985, they just proposed, some of the ophthalmologists proposed that, yes, as you are telling, two iris are not similar. You can just go ahead with your research. So that is where in 1985, they just came across this particular iris concept. In 1991, as they went on working with the face in a semi-automated way, as I told that they used to refer to the face, they used to refer to each and every characteristics, the distance between the eyes, nose, the distance between the mouth and the nose. See, this distance between the nose and the mouth may not be the same in all the individuals. This distance between the eyes may not be the same among all the individuals. It might be different. So they just, when they just found out that they have to find the distance among all the facial features, they just got to know, okay, fine, this is how I have to go ahead with my face recognition. So then they just found out that face detection is one thing that we are well versed now in 1991. So there they went through the making of real-time face recognition. That is, they asked some individuals to face the camera. They took the particular facial features of the individual. They took the distance of the photograph, and then they identified the other person based upon the features, based upon the difference that they had between the eyes, nose, mouth, and all those things. The same difference they calculated from the other person. Then they found out that, yes, even I can find out without seeing a person, that is, without actually my eyes, how it can see the person and it can just memorize that this is not the person who I have seen. In the same way, my system can also be able to recognize that this is not the same person. So they just found out the distance between all the facial features. They just added it to the database. They kept it. In the same way, for the second one, for the third one, for the fourth one, it went on. So this is how it went on for the first, second, third, fourth. And when they became identifying these faces, then they just went real time. So then they just put a camera on this particular streets and all those things. Then they used to identify the particular person, take a photograph, then add it to the system, compare the photograph with already existing individuals. Then they identified that this particular person photograph is not similar to that particular person whom I identified. So then they realized that there's something called as face recognition that can be automated with my system, as my eyes does. So whatever the things that we used to capture, the same things we used to feed into our system to work on with. So that is where the face detection was pioneered, and it became real-time face recognition possibility in the year 1991. And in 1993, there was a program called as Face Recognition Technology Program. This was initiated because at that time we came to know that everything can be automated in the face by identifying the features of the face in a very right way, or by identifying the features of a face in the very right manner. So that is where they used to identify a particular person in a proper way or in a proper manner. Fine. So the next thing is after 1993, when this particular program was initiated, the face recognition technology was into boom, and many of the industries, they just started realizing that they can just prepare a product for particular identification of a face of a person. And then they just came up with a product. Face recognition technology was involved in it, and everything was done. So then in 2010, US National Security actually utilized biometrics for identification. Then they just came up with a certain thing called as identification can be done using biometrics, and it was very simple way, and it was very secured way where we can just identify the individual by the individual itself. But by whoever you are, you will be identified. It is not based upon your cards or your signature or something like that. So that is where they just dealt with this particular biometrics. This is the exact timeline of biometrics. They started with the fingerprints. Then when they just identified some of the patterns in the fingerprints, then they realized that when the fingerprints can be recognized, why not the face? We are able to identify the individual as unique. Why not my system? So then when they were able to identify that the system is unique, then they just came up with their own concept of making this particular face recognition technology. So this is how the particular timeline of biometrics existed from 1640 something to till date. So this was the exact timeline of biometrics. Some of the important things I have added here. There is plenty of things that can be gone through with various books, with various articles and all those things. So then we just realized how actually it was. Then there was a question. See, whenever we just do something, whenever we just do some research, whenever we just do some tasks, what exactly happens here is that there will be plenty of questions and there will be plenty of answers that needs to be found out. So when they just asked that in 2010 somehow, we are just making the identification through this biometrics. Some of us are educated and we know that it won't affect anything. But some of the people feels that when we ask their photograph, when we ask their fingerprint, when we ask their iris, when it comes to the physiological characteristics, they refused in the beginning days. Why? Because they didn't have some idea. Since we just dealt with the research, we know what exactly it is, but we have to convince a normal person who is not having any idea about what it is. He will just tell that a strict no, because you're taking some physiological characteristic of mine. I cannot give it. I cannot give my fingerprint. I cannot give my photograph to you. It is actually taking a high amount of security concern. There was long debates and there was some misopinions that were created during those days to when biometrics were coming into existence. So then they just add a question. We have already the traditional security systems. Why you want biometric systems? Traditional security, we had like traditional methods, some of the traditional methods that were used. When we just handled the security through the traditional systems, and when we just wanted the traditional security to work on with, we just had many things there. So what were those things that we just dealt with us? See, these were the traditional methods that we had. What was it? It was a knowledge-based and object-based. So what was the convenience? What is the example of it? Suppose it is a PIN enabled. That is, you will be actually memorizing the PIN and it's a bank card. Fine. So you have to memorize a password. Many a times it happens that we will forget the password because we have kept different passwords to the different systems, different logins. Then we will forget because we are human beings. We can forget. And unknowingly, we might tell the password to the other person. So they can or he can just log into the system as it is. So where you can, that is knowledge-based, object-based. Knowledge-based means you have to memorize something and it will be in your knowledge. That is, if I just ask you the password, if I just want to open the door at my home, I'll be having the key. Fine, it will be locked. I'll be having the key. Then I will just open it. Fine. So that is an object that I am just using to open the lock. Fine. So that can be stolen. By chance, if I coming on the way in the bus or some other transport means, I have lost it. Some other person may have access to it. He can open. Not an issue there. So it can be lost. Even when I have access to the password, if I just set password for my door lock, fine. So in that case, if I just set password to my particular bank locker, and if I forgot, then obviously I have to memorize everything. That will be a big deal for me where I have to memorize all the things accurately to open something. Fine. So knowledge based is something called you have to memorize or you have to keep in mind what exactly it is. And object based is something where you have to keep it with you and it can be stolen. You can give it to your friend also to open the key. And even the password, you can tell it to your friend. He can go, he can access, he can get the stuff there. All these things are possible. So even the ID cards or ID based, everything, photo IDs, everything you will carry along with you. You can just give it to someone or someone may steal it from you. It can be stolen. So that is what we are actually compromising with. So two factors provide security in case either compromised. In the sense, knowledge or ID based, it can be compromised. You have to memorize a password, you have to wear your ID. It can provide the access to you, but the system will not tell that You are the person who entered into that particular system inside. Fine. Suppose if I just want to enter into a data center. If I have only the key, or if I want to enter into a bank, or if I want to enter into a particular office which is very confidential, which has very confidential information there, then what can be done there? If I just have a key, then my friend can take the key and he can just open the door and he can just get inside. Who is there to recognize that he's the person, right? He can have my ID, he can wear my ID card and he can call himself as the person A. I am person A. If the person is entering to that particular office for the first time, then the particular colleagues may believe that he is the person A because they don't know him. Fine. If the ID card has a face, okay. If someone has the patience to recognize that, to see the face and then allow inside, that is okay to some extent. But or else, obviously, you will get into the office. Obviously, you'll get into the system. So that is where we just went wrong to provide the security. So where actually the security became very important was in the military applications, where exactly the security was needed. Only certain persons will be having the privilege to enter certain areas there. So when it comes to the military applications, they just got to know that they need to do something to make sure that the security is increased more and more. So when they just got through some of the case studies regarding this particular security, where the security concern became the major factor, then they realized that they have to come up with something where this particular security should be enhanced. So then they just thought of adding a password to the bank lockers, or adding more keys, or if there is one box, they'll just add 3 boxes and then they will just add a key to all the 3 boxes, and they set the password to each and every box there. Everything was done, but still the password were stolen. The keys were stolen. Still there was a security threat after doing all these things. Then they realized that this particular concept of object-based or knowledge-based systems will not work. We have to come up with treating the individual himself as a security. So when the particular person comes, then only this particular security concept comes into the picture. So they realize that the particular person should be there, then only he'll be able to enter the particular system. If he is not the one, he'll not be provided the access with. If a person by name B is telling he's a person A, and if he's opening the door, no, he cannot open. If he has a key, he can open. If he has a password, he can open the door. But if we treat the person himself as a password, if we treat the person himself as a key, this is not possible. Entering into a system without his consent is not at all a possible task. So that is where our particular biometrics came into existence, where the system usually recognizes face or iris or fingerprints and then lets the person inside that particular room or inside that particular facility. So that is where the task came into picture. So these were the disadvantages. When they just came up with these disadvantages, then they just dealt with automatic advantages. Fine. So when they just came up with these particular disadvantages, that is the disadvantages of the knowledge-based, the disadvantages of the object-based system, and all these things were the disadvantages that dealt with. When they just realized that these were all the disadvantages that actually came on their way, then they realized there should be something, we have to do something, where we have to take the biometrics as a main part. So for that, there were many discussions that went through all the line way there, where the people refused to give their fingerprint, refused to give their face, refused to give their iris pattern, because the people were not in a situation to give it because they think that something is wrong. They're just doing something, or if we just face our iris to that particular device, it may affect their health. All these things were misconceptions that were there into the people's head during those days. But as and when they got to realize that this was only because to enhance the security, they were convinced regarding this, and they just came up with this particular concept of biometric systems. So now we got to know what was the timeline of biometric system, how actually the biometric systems came into existence, that is from the fingerprint, from the face, from the iris. And then we got to know that what were the traditional methods that we had for security? Why only biometrics for security? So we got to realize that they were all knowledge-based, based upon the memory that we have. It was like when we just forget the password, it's gone. When we just make sure that we were not in a position to have the key with us, or we lost something, we lost our ID card, we lost our ATM bank card, we lost something, then it's gone. The person who gets it can have an easy access to it without our permission. He can have an access and he can do whatever he wants by our name. Then we realized that the biometric systems was one of the things that came into existence. So how actually these biometric systems were implemented in the beginning days, how they actually came up with this particular concept of biometrics. So they just came up with, okay, fine, there is a face recognition, there's a fingerprint recognition, there is iris recognition, every research was went through. But when they want to identify a particular person as A, they want a database where that particular person photo is stored, right? Suppose if we want to identify a person as a criminal, then we should have a database of all the individuals who are not criminals. Then only we can identify that this particular person is a criminal. For that, we want the database of all the individuals in that particular section. Suppose if there is an area, I want to identify the criminal, who is a criminal there. I already have a photograph of that particular person. And suppose we just have a case study for that, where there is one area and the people are identifying the criminal there. And a particular area police has got the information that there's a criminal in that particular area. What they'll do, they have to search the complete area, right? Rather than doing it, if we want to identify a particular person, if we have the database of all the individuals of that particular area, then will it be easy for us to identify the individual? It will be easier, right? Because we already have a database with us where we have the information of all the individuals. And if one person is entering that particular system, all of a sudden, my system will be able to identify that particular person and will be able to list out the information of that particular person. Based upon that information, it will be easier for me to track that some other entity has entered into this particular system all of a sudden, right? So for that, I need database. I need all the individuals' face, fingerprint, iris, and their demographic data, that is their name and their address, everything I need to identify that particular person, right? So for this, what should be done? What was the process that was followed? So beginning, they just, before deploying this biometric systems everywhere, what they just thought was, they just want a database where the enrollment needs to be done. Suppose if I just want to implement biometric systems in my college, what I'll do, I'll ask all the faculties, I'll ask all the students to give their biometric data. I'll capture their face, I'll capture their fingerprints, I'll capture their iris, and I'll make sure that the data is being stored in a database. Later on, when they come back, when they give their face, then I'll identify that if the face is recognized with the face that is present in the database, then I'll identify that this person is the same and this student belongs to my college because his data is there already in my database. I have enrolled this particular face. Suppose a person from the next college comes to my college and he sees that I belongs to this college. How to identify? I already have my enrollment details with me. I'll ask that person to give your face. He'll just show, I'll just capture the face. I'll compare with the database with all the faces that I have. And if the person is not recognized, I'll strictly tell that, no, you don't belong to this college because you have not enrolled your face stating you are a student of my college. So this is how we will just be identifying the people. So we'll just go ahead with the particular stages of this biometric systems. First is the enrollment. It records the information. It records the information means your name, your ID, everything. And it records your iris patterns. It records your face, fingerprint, the physiological aspects, that the physical characteristics of a person will already be recorded along with the demographic data. Because if a person detail is recorded, face, fingerprint, and iris, I should know who is the person, right? I have to have the name of the person. and I have to have the address of the person. Fine. So then I'll record the data. Then I will compare the data with whatever the existing data that I have. This is how the biometric systems takes place. We'll just have a complete look at it like this. See, this is a capturing of the demographic data. You will be having your name, address, gender, date of birth, mobile number, email ID. All these things are the demographic data that the person can type there and that the person can store there. Here, the two persons can have the same names. Do you agree? Two persons can have the same name there, right? So we agree that two persons can have the same name. And if we go to the particular center of enrollment, two persons can have the same address also. Because if we are staying in a home, I can have the same address. My parents can have the same address. Siblings can have the same address. Fine. So we can just not make the address as a primary key for us. Fine. So where we have the other options also like date of birth, gender, mobile, email, every demographic data. Then we will ask the person to have that is to show his face to the camera so that my camera recognizes his face and my camera actually takes his photograph and stores it in a database. And then apart from it, suppose if there are two twins, then obviously everything will be the same. So in that case, to be on safer side, I'll just ask the person to place all the 10 fingers. So for more security purpose, I'll ask a person to place all the 10 fingers and then I'll capture the information of all the 10 fingerprints. I'll store it in a database. Then I'll ask the person to give 2 iris data also for further protection. Then I will store it in a database. The particular demographic as well as the particular physical characteristics of a person will be stored in a particular database and it will be kept. That is ready. Enrollment is done. Fine. So in case of children below 5 years, usually they'll just take the parents' phone number, parents' email ID, parents' address, and they will just take the photograph of the children because see, when we were small, if we give the particular photograph of us when we were like in first standard, second standard, and if we ask someone to identify us, will they be able to identify us now? No, right? They won't be able to do so. So in that case, my face won't work. And even the fingerprints will be very small ridges, very small bifurcations, and very small things will be there. Minute details will be there. Suppose if I want those details to be enhanced, I can give the enrollment later on for my purpose. So in that case, what can be done? They can give their parents' data completely. But whereas that particular child can give the iris information, this iris information will be differentiated among the children also. That is, the person will be having the pattern of the iris will be when the person is there in the womb or when a child is there in womb itself, the particular iris pattern will be recognized there. The iris patterns will be dissimilar there. Even the twins will not be having the same iris. So they can be recognized with the help of the iris pattern also. But since the particular child may not be very comfortable giving his eyes to that particular camera or focusing that particular camera, what they'll ask to do, they'll just take the photograph and they'll just take the parents' information and they'll just keep it for time being. I cannot say that I will just take my particular enrollment. I have done my enrollment 20 years back. Take it out. This is me. I cannot state completely. Only a particular part of it may be recognized, not completely. So in that case, they'll just ask their parents' information. They'll just go back, track the parents' information, and they'll just store it there until the particular child attains certain age where his fingerprints and face will be actually captured. But in that case, iris can be captured because the iris pattern will be the same later on also. It cannot change. And it is very useful to differentiate that particular person with the next person. So this is how the enrollment takes place. What is exactly the enrollment now? We are having the demographic data. We are having the biometric data that is stored in the database for the identification for the next purpose. So when we just give the data, it should be stored, right? Suppose if I'm telling something and if I'm telling you these details of biometrics, it should be stored in your mind, right? As of now, at least. So that should be stored in the memory to actually, you have to work on something means it should be stored in the memory. Then we will take out of the storage whenever it is needed. Then we will work based upon that. This is what I have heard there. This is what I have learned from here, right? In the same way, I have to have my system to store something. Whatever I give, that should be stored, because if it is not stored, how will I be able to recognize the particular person when he again enters the system, right? So when he again enters the system, even us also, right? When we just see the particular person for 2 times, 3 times, our eyes will capture his information and it will be stored in our brain. When we see the person for the 4th, 5th time, then we will recognize him by his name. Okay, he is my friend, he was my friend, and all those things, right? In the same way, if my system want to recognize that particular person again, when he comes to face the same camera, I have to have the information in my particular storage, right? So the next thing is storage. How actually the storage will be performed. If it is a face, I'll capture my face and I'll convert the areas of the face. This is all the technical concepts where you can just convert it RGB to the gray level values and just store the phase values there. You will be having plenty of the algorithms to deal with it, to convert it, and then generate the face images, convert it into the format my system is able to understand. Fine. If I give a name to the system and then if I ask you to recognize it, we know that it won't us, because it is able to understand everything in a numerical format, binary format. I have to convert everything in a language my system is able to understand. Fine. So in the same way, my particular face will be converted to a template, and that particular template will be stored in the database rather than the complete image. But when we ask a normal person, they will think that the particular face will be stored in the database. But as of now, the templates will be stored in the database. And we know that data compressions and all, where we can just compress and store it, because space occupied will be less in that case. In the same way, the fingerprint, since we are giving 10 fingerprints there, so it takes many time there. So I told you many companies are coming ahead, when many companies are releasing their product for the fingerprint and face and iris. How the companies are, see, there are many companies. I have to tell this company is the first one, second one, third one, and it goes off. How in this case is that it is based upon the fingerprint they capture. If it captures fingerprint within certain seconds when compared to the other company product, obviously we'll just go with this particular fingerprint scanner and we'll just give the fingerprint. It extracts the minutiae information, it extracts the all small information that is there in the fingerprint, it extracts. And then it will store all the information into the storage or a data set that it has along with that particular person name. So this is what we just call it as storing the information. We are storing the information, we are capturing the information, we just call it as enrollment. Take the information, store it into your database, it converts it into a template and then stores it into a database exactly. So after storage, what needs to be done? After storage, what is the task that needs to be done? Basically, if I go back and if I just go back to my system and then suppose if I just, I'm done with my enrollment during the admission phase to my college, and then it is stored as a data. Then I have admitted to a particular college, and during the first day of my college, what they're doing, they're not taking the attendance manually. They're taking the attendance based upon the face recognition. So I'll give my face again. Fine. Then it should be able to recognize me that her name is A or her name is Divya. She has entered into the college. She has already enrolled the details here. Fine. So to do that, first enrollment needs to be done. The second one, storing the template in a proper way needs to be done. The third one is you have to compare. It might be a face, it might be a fingerprint, or it might be an iris. What is the third phase we are doing or we are going to do here is that we are just going to compare the particular thing that I have given to the system with the already existing template. Fine. So that is what we have mentioned it here. First, you are enrolling the particular fingerprint. Then the sample will be collected. Templates will be extracted. The template will be stored in the database. Then again, if I go to the college on my first day, I will give the same fingerprint. Will you go to the college wearing different wearing different fingerprints? No, right? So you will be having the same fingerprints. So give the same fingerprint and then it will just recognize, it will just compare your fingerprint with all the existing details in the database. Then it will just verify that, okay, fine, he is the person. So this is Divya. She has already admitted to the college. So you can log in or you can just give the attendance to that particular person. So it might be the phase one also. Suppose if nowadays there is a pandemic, right? So nobody wants to use certain product, or nobody wants to use a pen, or nobody wants to place a finger on the scanner where the other person has already placed his finger, right? Placed his finger. So in that case, what I'll do, I'll just tell that, no, I'm not comfortable with this fingerprint device as of now. So I'll just go with the facial manner. So even the face is already captured. Even if you give the face also, that will also be recognized. Even if you give the face, that will also be recognized, right? So I will just make sure that I'll just give the face photograph. Then obviously it will compare the particular face image with all the images that are pre-existing in my database. And then it will show the answer as yes, it is yes. So this person has already enrolled himself or herself. So this is the person who he is stating to be. So this is a comparison. So now we got how actually the biometric systems work. That is, one is the enrollment phase. The other one is after enrollment, you are just storing the complete information of the face or fingerprint or iris into a database. And then after storing the information of the face or fingerprint or iris into a database, then I'm just going to compare it with the particular thing that I'm providing it to it now. Fine. In the verification stage, it is not mandatory that you have to provide face, fingerprint, everything for that matter. In the verification phase, you can just provide your name, you can provide your face, and you can just ask the database to identify who you are. So that is how you will just go ahead with the biometric systems. So which are all the companies, as I told that for this particular biometric systems to work, we need some of the softwares. We need certain products. I told you, you might have a question, ma'am. Anyhow, we have cameras with us. You can take a photograph, right? And we can have our system and we can just store it into the database. But we can store it. How the templates are being extracted from that, that is a matter. So that depends upon the products of the companies also, how they are going to capture the fingerprint, how they are going to capture the iris. See, for the enrollment, it is not a normal camera or normal thing that you are just going to use there. Fine. So when you just give your data for enrollment, they'll ask you to stay certain feet apart to capture it in a proper manner, right? Because why they will do so to capture it in a proper manner when they just take your photograph? You may just have a question, ma'am. When there is a video thing that is there and they want to identify our face, we'll not be placing our face in front of the camera that we did for enrollment. They'll be identifying us from far apart in the video. They will capture the face and then they will identify it. Why they will do it? That is for the verification. That is not the enrollment. When they do the enrollment, there is a certain procedure. What is that procedure? The camera should be placed within certain distance, within certain inch. Even for the iris, you have to make sure that you have to open up your eyes so that your iris will be visible completely. And even for the fingerprint, you have to place a fingerprint in a proper way. The fingerprint should be in such a way that the fingers should not be actually dealt with certain accidents or something like that. It should be proper enough to place your fingerprints. So all these things will be taken care during the time of enrollment. Why? Because the data once stored is very important. When the data is being already stored during the time of enrollment inside the particular system, it cannot be changed because that is the enrolled data and it will be used throughout your life. And it will be used wherever you go. If you want yourself to get recognized based upon the physical characteristics, they'll fetch the data from the storage and they'll identify that particular person. You might have seen certain case studies, right? In certain situations when a girl was lost or when a kid was lost, usually his biometrics was given. Then they got a demographic data, who actually her parents were, who actually, what was the address of that particular child based upon the physical characteristics. She has not carried any ID card with her. She has not carried anything with her. And she don't know the language of the people also there, because she was in a different country and she was there by chance. She went to a different state or a country where she don't know the language. In that case, physical characteristics will be the same, right? So she can give the fingerprint, she can give the face. There, my database, what it does, it fetches the information of that particular person. Then we will get to know who is she, where does she belong to, right? We can get the demographic information based upon the physical information. So all these things are possible because of the products of the companies. Which are the companies that are dealing with it? There is Biometrics and Edemia, Suprema, NSC, Mantra, all these things, they will design their own enrollment devices for use for enrollment. That is a camera for video capture or the face capture, and iris scanner device, which is used to scan the iris in a proper way with minute patterns recognized within seconds, and fingerprint scanner with fingerprints recognized within seconds. So these are very important aspects that the companies should deal with. And these companies, these biometrics companies are basically working on it to make sure that these things works in a very better way and in a proper way to me. So that is where they just come into existence for these particular things. So after going through the companies, then I think you have the doubt with respect to the identification and verification here. So if you have the doubt with respect to the identification and verification here, what exactly needs to be done? See, when we just compare the identification with respect to the verification. So what is verification? Verification in the sense, is this the one who he claims to be? Suppose if I just want to enter a particular area which is actually secured. In that case, if I just want to enter an area, I'll just tell that I am an officer who belongs to this particular area, or I am an officer who actually have the privilege to enter into this particular area. So then what they does, I'll ask you to give your name and give your face. You will give your face, fingerprints, iris, and then they'll ask you to wait for 2 minutes. They'll just feed in the data to the system. They will compare whatever the things that you have given, they'll compare with the database, whether it is the same thing. They'll compare the name with the name. They'll compare the photograph with the photograph to whom you are stating. That is, if you're stating that I am a person A, they'll compare your photograph with the existing photograph. They'll compare your name with the existing name. They'll compare your fingerprints with already existing fingerprints. Fine. So all these things, what they'll do is they'll compare each and everything there with the already existing data. Fine. So that is called as verification. You're verifying a particular person. That is 1:1 match. You are already stating who you are. You are just stating who you are. They are verifying your data with the already existing data. That is 1:1 match. Whether they are not checking with all the data, they are checking whether you are the person whom you are going to claim you are. Fine. Suppose if I'm just telling that I am Divya, they are verifying in the database whether I am Divya or not. That's it. That is 1:1 match. That is called we are verifying a person. It is not identification. It is a verification of the purpose. You are verifying based upon his data that he has given. Whereas identification is not, who is this? I told you that a girl is missed somewhere and she was recognized based upon her physical characteristics, right? So that is called identification. Fine. So whenever a person is missed, what they'll do, they'll ask that particular person to give his fingerprint, give his iris pattern, and they will just take the photograph. They will feed it to the database. And then they will search. That is 1:n. That is, they'll search that particular person data with all the available set of data in their database. Then they will get to know that this particular person is by this name. They are going to identify who is that particular person. They are going to identify the person. Whereas in verification, they are going to verify whether whatever the person is telling is correct or not. That is called as verification. Suppose if you enter into the airport of a particular country, what they'll do, you will just give your ID cards, you will just give your face, fingerprint, iris. Then in the other country, what they'll do, they'll just check whether you are the person whom you are stating to. Suppose if you are missed somewhere, you don't have your ID cards, you don't have something to prove yourself, then what you will do, you will have your physical characteristics. Then what you can do, you're missed somewhere, give your fingerprints, give your iris pattern, give your face pattern. They will recognize with the central database server where every information will be stored. Then they will tell that, see, you belong to this particular area. You are missed there. Fine. So we'll just go ahead with the types of the biometrics here. One is the fingerprint, hand, iris, face. So physiological types means whatever the physical things that we have, that is fingerprint, hand, iris, face, DNA, all these things are the physiological. Whereas behavioral means the way we put the signature. See, when we put the signature, we'll press the pen like this. We will hold the pen like this. We will have different way of writing all these things, right? So that is nothing but the actual behavioral characteristic. And then the voice modulation, the way I speak may differ from the person who speaks. Okay, that is the way I speak will differ in tone or in the expression of the words, or all these things will change based upon the behavior or the keystroke. When we type something, fine, I may type it fast. The other person may type it in a slow manner. So when we type something, the keystroke also changes, right? So that is called behavior, the way we behave, the way we walk, the way we write, the way we type, the way we put the signature. All these things, we just meant it for the particular behavioral characteristic, fine? So the next thing is, as we see here, DNA matching, eyes, face recognition, we just went through all these things in a brief manner. Fingerprint, iris, ear, all these things are the external characteristics that can be fed to the system directly. So this we just call it as a physical characteristics that can be caught, or that can be make sure that that is captured, and then that can be fed to the system. So in the same way, you have vein recognition, odor, gait, typing recognition, all these things comes under behavior, even though you can just have multi-modal biometrics. That is, you can combine your face biometrics or a fingerprint biometrics with the other behavioral biometrics also. You can combine them with the other aspects also. Fine. So that is what we'll be doing. So this is a comparison of now if we compare a technology, for authentication, now we have an idea how biometrics came into existence, how the templates will be stored, how biometric system works, how we are able to give the enrollment, storage, comparison, all these things we have a better idea now. After going through this idea, if we go back and compare the technology for the authentication, what exactly it does? See, here you have an easy manner to understand. Driving license, photo ID, magnetic stripe, holograph, smart card, Prox card, everything. It is something you carry. You will carry with it, with yourself, right? And then, whereas the PIN, password, challenge response, everything is something you know. You have to memorize. That is, I told you, right? It is all the knowledge based. Whereas the first one is object based. And something you are, even though you are missed somewhere, you will be missed somewhere, losing your iris, losing your fingerprint, or losing your face somewhere. No, right? You will be missed somewhere with all these things in yourself, right? So when you are missed somewhere with all these things in yourself, you can identify yourself with a proper manner, right? So that is something you are. You need not have to carry something with you. And no one can steal that from you. Will anyone cut the fingerprint without your consent and they'll take it away? No, right? It is not possible. It is not so easy like they steal your keys or ID cards or something like that, right? Even password also, they can just tell you to, or they can just make sure, or they can just fool you to tell, or they can just analyze it with various combinations. But when we have physical characteristics, you have to be present there as a person. Without your consent, nothing can be done there. So the other things were based upon the low security, low accuracy, whereas this thing is based upon the high security and high accuracy. That is what is being shown in the graph. So when we just go ahead with the accuracy, cost, size of the template, stability, security, now we know as a normal, this one, enrollment, and all these things we just dealt with. Now, if we just think from the technical point of view, what actually this means is, accuracy, fingerprint was medium, cost is low, and size of the template is also small, because only the fingerprint is small size and we can just give it. And stability is low and security is low, and compared with all the other traits. We are not comparing it with the traditional methods here. We are just comparing among the biometric traits itself. That's it. Okay. So this is fingerprint, then facial recognition, voice, iris, finger vein, and geometry, retina, and signature. What exactly it does means, so when we just compare with all the things, when we just go ahead with all the things here, it may be the accuracy, it may be the cost, it might be the size of the template, stability, security for that matter, anything for that matter. When we just go ahead, if you just go ahead with each of the rows there, fine, with respect to the attributes. What exactly that means here is that accuracy is high in terms of iris scan, as I told you, because no two twins can have the same iris pattern. So the accuracy is very much high when compared to it. And cost is also okay. Cost is also high because the minute patterns will be analyzed from your iris. See, when I just look at your eyes, will I be able to see the patterns of your iris? No, right? I have to capture it. I have to analyze it in a minute format. So my particular cost of that particular scanner also takes very high cost. And size of the template will be small because I am just storing the iris pattern, and then I'm just converting it to my dimensions. Then I'm storing into the database. Stability is high because obviously you cannot change it. And security, it depends upon where you are particularly using that particular biometric, right? Fine. So when just compared with all the other things, see, retina is having very much high accuracy, very much high cost and all those things, but the capturing device for the retina is not so comfortable for the user, because they'll ask your eyes to be placed completely inside that particular device, and the complete recognition goes there, and then they have to capture the retina that is being present inside. So for that, some of the users may say no, because they might feel somewhat hurt to sometimes. They won't feel, but still they might feel that giving the particular retinal information may be quite difficult for them, because there should be proper users. There should be proper trained persons who will actually capture the retina in a proper manner for the user. All of the retina should be captured in a proper manner. For that, there should be trained persons who actually capture the retina. And when compared with all the other things, obviously retina has higher percentage of accuracy, but capturing and storing the information, it takes a lot of time. Capturing itself takes a lot of time, and the user giving the retina for the enrollment should have some patience until the retina is captured in a proper way. So that is what one of the particular disadvantage of it. So out of these, when we just studied, the major things that we just dealt with all the perspectives is face. One is the face, the other one is the fingerprint, the other one is the iris. So now see, three major biometric traits that we just went through when we studied all these things is face, fingerprint, and iris. So what is a face biometrics? Identification that uses the body measurement in case of face and head to verify the identity of a person through its physical face biometric pattern and the data. I told you that face biometric pattern and the data means if I have an eyes, see, I have to just carry out the distance between these 2 points. I have to carry out the distance between here eyes and nose and mouth, and here and chin to ears. So if I just carry out the distance throughout my face like this, then I'll just be able to get a particular pattern of the data that will be stored as a template. This is from the technical perspective. We just dealt with the normal perspective of enrollment and all those things. Now, if we guys just go ahead with the technical perspective of the face biometrics. So now if we just go ahead with the technical perspective of a face biometrics, now we will just identify the particular pattern in the face biometric, and we will just identify the particular pattern in the data. Fine. So that is what we just call it as a face biometric. Fine. So in the face recognition, what exactly we are just going to do here is that, see, I told you identification and verification, right? So what was the first one? Just analyze yourself. Who is this person? He is David. What is this? Is this identification or verification, the first one? Yes, it is identification. Whereas is he who he is going to claim to be, that is verification. You are verifying a particular person. See, in the particular photograph, you have a very understandable format. Here, in the second one, you are just comparing the particular person photograph with the person photograph, and then, yes, he is a person who he claims to be. Whereas in the first one, you are comparing the person with almost all the sets in the database. You are comparing the person with almost all the sets in the database, and then you are just telling that, okay, this person is identified by the name David. Fine. Whereas in the second one, you are actually particularly checking all the things, then you are identifying the particular person. That is, you are checking the demographic data with the demographic data. You are checking the person face data with the face data and verifying, is he who he claims to be. Fine. So that is what is the major difference between the identification and the verification when we just come across with this particular aspect. So when we just tell that, when we just want to go ahead with our, you can just have a question. Okay, madam, you told that these are the things that we are going to study. If we just want to utilize for ourselves, if we just want to learn for ourselves, how actually it gets compared, how actually it gets trained, how actually I can train my system, how actually can I work on my system. If I just want to do all those things, if I just want to do all the comparisons here, are there any data sets that I can just go ahead? So are there any data sets that I can go ahead? So these are the data sets. If you just go through these data sets, you will just get the data sets with different facial expression, different face, and if you just want with different illumination, with different camera illuminations, all these things will be there in this particular database. You can take the face and you can just create the template. You can just compare and you can just see whether your particular program or whether your particular logic or whether your particular algorithm that you are designed is working properly. So these are some of the data sets you will get. So this is how you will just be doing your face recognition. You might capture, you might scan the face as an individual face, then see in the photograph, you can identify there are certain points that are noticed, right? So there are certain lines that are joined, right? So this is what I told, when identification of a person, this is how it will be identified. The points will be noted down and the points will be actually, you will just join the points and you will just create a face. It will be processed. It will be created as a template. It will be stored. After that, if you just see the person, if you just want to identify a person among the set of persons from the video camera, fine. So from a video camera, you can just take the person face and then you can recognize based upon the things that was mentioned there. So this is how you will actually be going to identify the face. So this is how actually it works like. See, this is how it actually works like if you just can see it, right? So in the camera, the particular person's face will be identified like this. Then face analysis, I told you there are certain such points that needs to be noticed there. These are the points that are noticed there. So you can just mark those points, analyzed, and then that will be converted to the format. The data will be converted to the template format that is understandable by my system. So that is how you will just do the data conversion. Then you will match that particular data with the already existing template data. And then you will find a match. So this is how your particular face recognition works. So what are the pros and cons of face recognition here? So it is used to unlock devices. It can be used at airports, and you have the machine learning and artificial intelligence to work on it. And you can avoid the spread of diseases by facial recognition. Suppose if a person is affected by something, then you can just make sure that this person should be isolated. And it helps to identify the fake passports. It is harder for the criminals to hide, because if we have a video camera, then we can just, if the particular face of a criminal gets captured there, it will immediately identify that particular face with the database, and it will just make sure that the demographic of information of a person will be displayed automatically. Right? So what are the constraints when particular face recognition is involved? Obviously, it is expensive, but it can be misused. Sometimes they might just tell that they might give the face and they might give the other person's name and all those things. Technology is not mature yet to actually identify it completely. So that is what is actual constraint or actual disadvantage for this face. As I told, the general public may actually agree with this, or the general public may not agree with this to give the face, but in the video camera, you can just get the face. That is one advantage. You need not have to call the person in person for iris. We will call the person and then we will ask him to give his iris, then we will capture. That may be avoided with respect to the face, because we can capture from far away and then we can get the face of a particular person. We can give it to the database. The database will identify the template, match the template, it will give the demographic information. That is one of the best advantage. Disadvantage is that if there are twins, suppose one person is a very good person and the other one person is a criminal, we cannot take the good person and make sure that he is a criminal. So for that, the face biometrics maybe somehow it needs to be managed. So in that case, we can just go ahead with the other type. As I told, fingerprint. What exactly is a fingerprint? We will take the fingerprints, all the 10 fingerprints we will be taking. We will be capturing the fingerprint. We will be asking the person to place the fingerprint. Here also, we cannot capture the fingerprint without the permission or without the consent of a particular person. if we get the doubt in the airports and all, if we have a doubt on that particular person, whether he belongs to this country or not, or whether why he has come and all those things, we will take the fingerprint, then we will match with his consent. How actually it works, obviously I told, this is a technical detail. That is, you have to extract the unique biometric features. There will be whorl, or there will be some bifurcations, and there will be some things that are there. See, I have mentioned in the diagram. See, these are all the things that I have identified, and then we will actually make sure that we will just join them, and it will create a unique pattern for me. And that particular pattern is stored as a template consisting of the binary representable unique features. That template will be different for different individuals. So we will just store that particular template, which is a unique pattern, into the database. Then we will just compare it with already existing features. Then we will identify the particular person. So how actually it is captured? We will just place our fingerprint on the biometric sensor, and then features are extracted. Then we will just adopt template protection algorithm to protect it. Then obviously we will just have the algorithm to match the fingerprints, to match the templates. Then that is, during the enrollment, you will just give the fingerprint as stated in the earlier picture. And during the authentication, you will just authenticate that you are the person who has given the fingerprint. It is your fingerprint. Right? So that is authentication. The beginning was the enrollment. So what are the advantages and disadvantages here? It is a robust identification tool, and it replaces to remember, and it avoids your memory to store many passwords, because if you have the fingerprint, at least you can just give it. And it is obviously easy to use also. You cannot stand with certain feet away, or it is not captured, turn this way, and all these things will not be done. Just give the fingerprint, come out. What are the disadvantages? It cannot be used everywhere. See, some of the person may not be actually giving the fingerprint. Nowadays, I told that due to pandemic, they may actually disagree facing the fingers on the particular scanner because the other person might have placed there, and all these things may happen due to certain reasons. And it is quite expensive because why this happens? Why it's quite expensive? Because you are placing all the fingerprints there, and it has to capture, it has to store the templates there, and it has to move it to the database. Fine. So the other one main drawback of this is the system failures may block the access to this. Suppose if you are giving the fingerprint and some software development kit or something went wrong there, in that case, you cannot access the system directly. So in that case, the system failures may block the access because it needs much effort and it is computationally expensive to some extent. So that is what is the disadvantage of your fingerprint biometrics. Fine. So when compared with the security aspects for face and fingerprints, obviously your iris plays a major role. So it is used in almost government, finance and banking and all the other sectors basically. And we just saw this, we'll just be seeing that in the applications part also. The other thing is your iris. So when they just ask you to give your iris, what they'll ask, they'll just ask you to open up your eyes, right? Like this. So if you open up your eyes like this, then they'll capture the complete information. Why? Because when they just capture the information, eyelashes or eyelids, all these things should be made sure that they should avoid all these things and they have to capture only this part. Then only they'll be able to completely enroll your iris in an accurate manner. Fine. So what actually this does, it is a colored portion of the eye that regulates the size of the pupil. So this will be the middle part, will be the pupil, and the colored portion of the eyes that we have is nothing but the iris. When we just normally look at it, we'll not be able to identify that there are certain patterns that are unique, and we'll be able to recognize that patterns, and that will be able to recognize the individual as a very unique individual, and it is different for even the twins also. So all these things we'll not be able to refer when we just normally see our iris in a normal fashion. Fine. We'll be able to recognize it when we just capture it in a proper manner without our eyelashes or something affecting it. Fine. So it has random patterns and it has unique complex patterns that needs to be studied here. So this is one of the automated method now. So when we just go ahead, as I told you, there is certain particular database that needs to be dealt with for face recognition. And if you want to work on the iris recognition with respect to the database, and if you want to just focus on it, then you can just go ahead with these databases, Cassia, BATH, MMU, ICE, Pool, and Ubris databases. These are all available. You can just go ahead with those databases. It contains iris with eyelashes covered, or with the person who is having some glaucoma conditions, or with the person who is affected with some disease, or if you want to work more on it, you can just take the particular database and you can just work on it. And if you want to work more on the particular iris, if I just want using eyelashes, that is, if the particular face or the iris covered with eyelashes, eyelids, I want to have certain images so that it actually gains weightage, because after actually removing all those things, then we have to get the iris, a portion of the iris, then we have to work it out, right? So I have to have more time for that. So in that case, my particular research, whatever the particular topic that you are doing, or whatever the program that you are doing, will carries more weightage, because if you are interested in knowing how actually the particular iris portion will be extracted when we have all these things noise. So there you can just get that. And as I told, wherever I have put yes there, it contains all the database that consists of all these things. Fine. That is divergent gaze or indistinct motion, reflection, light. If you want all those things, then you can just go ahead with one database. If you want the other things using eyelashes, eyelids, are there any database consist of this, so that I can just take it and I can just create the algorithm, then I can just work it out. You have that thing here. So this is how the acquisition will be done. Then with the database, you will just have this. Advantages is it is an internal organ of the eye. It's highly protected when compared to the fingerprint and the face, and patterns imaged from a distance. And it is apparently stable throughout the life. As I told you, throughout the life, you will be having the same iris pattern, but our face may change from the first year to the time when we join our degree. Our face will change. The fingerprints may also be changed to a bit extent, but here the iris will never change. Fine. It's a small target, but the noise here we can state is eyelashes, lenses, reflection, wearing the glass. All these things are the noise. So with those things, you can just deal with it, and then you can just extract the iris out of it. How to extract this? So the disadvantage is that when they wear the glass, when they wear the lens, you have to deal with it. Or when they just have certain things, like when they just have the disease pertaining to eye, it might not be proper. So for those things, you need to have extra attention for that. So how to validate, as I told regarding face, fingerprint, or iris biometrics, these are the things that we just went through, how actually it takes place. A template will be created with certain algorithms that are there. But after doing this, how to measure the accuracy of a system, how to validate the system, or how we are going to measure the accuracy of a system there. So to measure the accuracy of a system, or to actually have the validation, you will have something called as false rejected rate and false acceptance rate. What is false rejected rate? In the case, there I have stated number of false rejection divided by number of authentic attempt star 100. It's a percentage. In the case, authentic attempt means you are the person whom you are claiming to be. You are the person. Suppose if you are a person by name A, you are telling the particular system administrator that you are a person by name A, and you will give your fingerprint, you will give your iris, you will give your face to recognize. By chance, the system recognizes you as not A. You are not A. In that case, it's a false rejection. You are the original person, but you yourself is not being able to recognize in the particular system. That is a false rejection rate. Fine. So whenever the products are used, the false rejection rate should be less. It should not reject a person who is actually genuine. So that is false rejection rate. You are just rejecting a person who is authentic. Fine. And in the same way, the opposite of it is false acceptance rate. Suppose I am Divya and I am stating my name to be the other person, but still the system gets you in. It identifies everything and it makes you, it unlocks and it gets you in, but you are not the genuine person. So there was a fault in the particular scanner, or there was a fault in the particular system to identify you as a wrong one. There was a fault in the software or an algorithm or something where it is identifying you as a wrong person. In that case, we have to make sure that we design an algorithm in a proper way. We take care of each and every minute details there. This happens in 1 in million cases or something like that. It is very rare to happen actually, but 1 in million cases, it might happen, like the particular person, whoever is not genuine, may enter into the system by chance. But since you are just taking nowadays, multimodal biometrics is there, where they will identify face, fingerprint, iris, and even the handwriting recognition, everything. If it is much secure to certain applications, then false acceptance or false rejection rate is very nil. It is almost to zero, because they're combining all the biometrics together. Even they can fool you with face, but not with iris. Even they fool with iris, but not with fingerprints. And they are just make you to write and handwriting recognition, behavioral biometrics also they are just coming up with, and with DNA and all those things. So nowadays, false rejection or false acceptance rate is almost to zero. But we have to make sure that even in 1 in million, it should not happen. So that is what we'll just be basically dealing with it. Fine. So then how you are just going to measure the accuracy of a person or the accuracy of a system, how actually it is recognizing is, it is based upon the false acceptance rate and false rejection rate. You are just going to measure the accuracy of the system. So what are the, at last, after studying all these things, if we just come across with the applications of the biometrics, what are the applications of the biometrics here? It is nothing but, in the commercial applications, as I told you, you can just have ATM, internet access, credit card, computer network security. All these things are commercial applications. We'll just be using it for commercial use. Whereas for the government applications, whenever we just want to enter into a system that is highly confidential and highly restricted environment, whenever we want to enter into a highly restricted environment, what needs to be done there is, the government applications may be national ID card, driving license, social security, border control, passport control. For all these things, we'll just be using this particular technological aspect. And we may use it for forensic applications, where we'll just be dealing with the fingerprints that is there in the particular part of the crime. And all those things we'll just capture, and then we'll just submit it to the database. Then we'll just recognize, then we'll just see who exactly was the person there. That is for DNA matching or for fingerprint matching. All these things we'll just be using. So that is for the forensic applications. It must be for corpse identification, criminal investigation, terrorist identification, parenthood determination, and the missing children. All these things comes under your forensic applications, where certain things will be placed there. You will identify, you will take the particular DNA sample, you will test with the database that you have a DNA sample with it, or you will already test with the fingerprint you will be having with yourself. So all these things are the applications. And after going through the applications, you have something called as future. So obviously, when we just dealt with all the things, you know what exactly the future, because you all are aware of this, and you all will be using this, and you all will be learning this in a very broad manner, because nowadays, you know, there are a wide variety of artificial intelligence, machine learning applications, and you already have the security aspects, cryptography, everything, you know. And what might be the future of this? It is already involved in the mobile payment or online banking, but the mobile payment nowadays we are just doing with our password itself to some extent. And online banking also we have something with our mobile, but in the mobile we can just have our fingerprint itself as to unlock our mobile phone nowadays, and our iris to unlock our mobile phone. And even in the immigration services and covering government needs, staff management, healthcare, because healthcare needs this, because if we just want to know the data of a particular person, then it is highly confidential, because we cannot know the health status of a particular person without his or her consent. It is highly confidential. Some of them may agree to give their information. Some of them may not agree to give their information to the other person, even though he or she is a family member. So in that case, in the healthcare, when you just go ahead and when you just give your face, when you just give your fingerprint only, they'll be able to give the complete records to you. So healthcare is also going ahead with these kind of services. And then multi-factors authentication, that is when you just have multi-factors included. You can just have a demographic information. You can just have wide variety of biometrics also included in this. You can have all the types of information into one, and you can just give it to the normal particular application. so that the data will be stored in an accurate manner and you can just recognize a particular person in a very good manner. And these are the references I just added here. And there are certain papers, there are plenty of papers that you can just go through these things. So you can just go ahead with those things. So thank you. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer you. Yes, Rajeshwari.
Okay, thank you for Ms. Divya. Okay, thank you. So we will continue to Q&A question. So for a participant that want to ask a question, you can raise hand and I will help you to unmute. So the first questioner is Rajeshwari.
Okay, thank you. Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rajesh.
Okay, I have some questions actually.
Yes.
Yeah, is it safe to use biometric authentication for a standalone authentication, ma'am? As you said that,
Yes.
as you said that even our biometric information cannot be stolen, but actually it can be, ma'am. Actually,
Yes.
it can be.
Yes,
Yeah.
it can be. But see, when you just want to steal the biometric information, you can just steal the templates that is actually stored in the system. If you just hack the system, or if you just hack the computer, you can or you can steal the templates there. But when you want it for your personal identification, whenever you just want to safeguard yourself, obviously the biometrics will be the best one to have access, right? So because it's there with you, it can be stolen, but when you just the templates can be stolen from the system. Obviously, when you just all the hacking things and all, obviously place you can just go ahead and you can just do that, but it will be highly secured because biometric data will not be, you will not be able to access any biometric data without the permission, because it will be in a highly secured environment, because that consists of the individual's information there. Fine. If it is in a college or some office sectors and all, obviously you can just have a biometric data stored there in a central system. You will know where it is. You will go and you will just find the templates there and you can just fetch it. But whereas in normal government, this one, when you do the enrollment for government agencies and all, it will be secure. And even for the data center, even when you want to enter into the data center, it will be highly secure, and the stealing of the biometric data is not so easy there. But in the and all, when you have a central server, you can do it and you can have it, but it's not when you just go there, because it will be stored in a very, very, very secure environment.
But ma'am, I ever read some article. It can be stolen even without any hacking skill. So as we said that our fingerprint, it can be cloned by masking tape and our facial characters. I ever read about one researcher. So he already download a sample picture of volunteers. Then he make a 3D structure of their face, and he succeed to breach 4 or 5 systems because of that 3D structure. So I think it can be stolen without any hacking skill, ma'am. So what is your opinion of this?
Yes. So they're just coming up with, see, these are all the things that they just went through, or these are all that they just dealt with it. As you, the face thing, that is that ones can have the same face, even though a particular person is not a criminal, but the other person is bought in, say, stating that he's a criminal, but he's not. So these are and masking of the face, masking of the fingerprint, and even we have seen certain case studies where they'll just cut the finger and they'll just take the finger and they'll place the fingerprint. All these things happen there. So see, there is some technology means there will be drawback and there will be advantages also. Just with how they can just make these things done in a proper way. So for what they just did was they just combined all the types of biometrics to have more security in the applications, like military applications and all, where the more security, they just combined the fingerprint, face, iris, everything, and they combined behavioral biometrics also. So there they are coming up with multimodal biometrics where they can just fool for 1 or 2 traits, all the things.
Okay, well, you said that it's not possible to hack in government database which store that biometric information. But I ever read a news one of department in US already hacked their database are already hacked, and more than 5.6 million of their employee biometric information already hacked. So how is it? It is in US actually.
Yes, I told you hacking. See, nowadays the technology is improving and are always ahead thinking what can be done. So since the technology is also improving, we cannot tell that this cannot be done completely. There is a possibility, but even from the other side of the government also, they are working on making sure that this particular task will not happen again. Because until and unless we get a problem, we don't find a solution to the problem, right? So when something happens, they'll just come up with the other aspect of it so that they can secure the data. So nowadays, they're just coming up with combining this particular biometrics along with some demographic informations like passwords and all those things. Then they'll just add more level of security to it. To enter into it, they'll add some cryptographical concepts there, security keys there. Then they have to enter into the particular biometrics. Previously, they had some data where they'll store only the biometric templates and all. Now, to the particular data itself, they'll just they are just going to add some cryptographical concepts, some concepts along with it, so that it becomes more secure along with it. Not only biometrics.
Ma'am, you said that how if that those particular hands or facial or iris got damaged, would it be affect for verification?
Okay, if a part of the iris or face,
hands and face got damaged.
If a part of the iris or the face gets affected, so what
got damaged.
Okay, fine. So if the part of the iris or the face it gets damaged, then what happens exactly? There was when it gets damaged, then they'll just go ahead with see if a face is damaged, we cannot take that particular, because I told you that there are 10 points in our face where they use right? So suppose half of the face is damaged, cannot take that. So I'll just give 50% or 40% priority to that, and the remaining priority I'll just consider as iris or the fingerprint. If suppose the iris is the fingerprint is damaged, then I'll just give priority to the iris. If the iris is damaged, I'll just give the priority to the face. So I am multimodal biometrics there. In that case, I cannot rely only on single biometric right. So if I just rely only on single biometric right, I'll not be able to identify the person in a proper way.
Okay.
What I'll be doing here.
One more question, may I?
Yes.
Okay. Nowadays, a company using heart rate for authentication. So what do you say about this?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Nowadays, company using heart rate for biometric authentication. So what is your opinion about this?
Yes, they're coming up with it. See, nowadays they're just coming up with DNA and heart rate and all those authentication systems. But yes, they're coming up with it. But I think the particular population should get more educated regarding this. But no one will share their DNA details or heart rate details or something. Even if they want to share iris or face or fingerprint details, they just took 10 to 12 years of time to get enrolled, because that's what they just dealt with it. But the companies are going ahead with that, where it can just help the health sectors there. So they can just get more security there. I think they can just go ahead, but we need the population to be more educated regarding this.
Okay.
If they're more educated, I think they can just give their information in a very, because those are all the sensible informations that we cannot force someone to give the information regarding their DNA or regarding some other things that they have, because these are all the characteristics. If the person wishes, they have to give, or else we cannot make the person to give. We have to convince. If we have to convince, they have to be educated regarding this, that we are not taking the data for some other things. We are taking the for a very good purpose.
But is it safe, ma'am, to share our heart rate monitoring like that? Because it is related to health purpose actually. It can disclose our health issue and etc. Because there are so many diseases related to heart, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is actually, as you told, we will be having concerns because even the DNA also they'll not share, and even the heart rate and all they'll not share because it is related to them. In that case, you can share, but it should be accessible only by you. And taking your concern, it can be given to other person. Even they are taking also by your concern only, they'll be able to give it to the other person, or else they'll not be able to give it to any other person. All these things, even the DNA or health matters and all, they have to get your signature that you have verified it. And you are actually telling that it can be shared, or else they won't give the data to anyone. Healthcare data will not be provided to anyone until and unless the individual gives his consent.
Okay. Thank you for answering. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Okay, thank you for this for the question. So we have 9 minutes more, and if you have any question, if other participants have question, you can raise hand or you can type it in the chat. Okay, this is there's a question that sent in my direct message. Okay, I will read it. Does biometric have any other functions besides security function? Because in the presentation, biometrics is explained to with the function with the security function. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. Any questions you have?
The question is, okay, does biometrics have any other functions besides the security function?
Can you type it in chat box, because I think it's not clear to me. The question is not clear to me. Does biometric have any other functions besides the security function? Security is the main concept of this particular biometric, but it is there in the commercial aspects, that is attendance system to take the attendance, or it is there in a health aspects to actually make sure that the health records is not shared with anyone. And it is there everywhere for the commercial purpose, for ATM transactions, for financial transactions, everywhere it is there. So you can just use biometrics in all the aspects apart from security also.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have talked about biometrics today, and I will conclude the materials. So, in short explanation, biometrics is automatic identification based on physical or anatomical characteristic of a person, like face recognition, fingerprint, iris recognition, and it's commonly used for security. So we talk about the introduction about biometrics. Then we talk about the system of biometrics and more interesting materials. So I think there's no other question, and I will close this question lecture. Thank you for Ms. Divya, and I will take some screenshot for other participants that I hope you can open your camera because I want to take a screenshot. 1, 2, 3, and cheese. Okay, thank you for all of participants. Thank you for Mrs. Divya. And we learned many things today about biometrics. Thank you. And I hope we can meet and other lectures. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was nice being with you all. Thank you.
Okay, I will end this meeting. Thank you for
Shall I leave?